Hello. Why did the Labour cabinet abstain from the grooming gang inquiry vote proposed by the Conservatives? Actually, they didn't just abstain. They stayed out of the chamber altogether. Why did they do that? And why are they now coming up with their own proposal of a more limited inquiry? Cooper announces inquiries into grooming gangs, but it's not quite the same as the inquiry proposed by the Conservatives. No, their proposal is for a far more limited operation. Why? Do you ever get the feeling that you're a peasant and the aristocrats are throwing crumbs to you? I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. So, in response to the shocked response, not only of the British people, but also of commentators all around the world, and after a parliamentary vote against the proposal that a national inquiry take place, the sort of thing where people are obliged to come and testify, Yvette Cooper, our Home Secretary, has announced an inquiry into what the BBC still calls grooming gangs. Yvette Cooper's proposal is for a strictly limited commission which will study what happened to thousands of British girls and the men who committed the crimes. But it'll go nowhere near looking at the people who facilitated the crimes, the police, the social services, the local politicians, the national politicians, and of course the Department of Public Prosecutions, which I have to remind you was headed by Keir Starmer during the time that there were several brave outliers calling out for action and who were being ignored. So, let's talk about the refusal properly to investigate the enormous child rape scandal which the whole world knows about now. A couple of weeks ago, there was a huge parliamentary vote by the Labour Party to squash the Conservative proposal that a national statutory inquiry should be held. The question everybody has been asking thereafter is, why did Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, Chancellor Rachel Reeves, Health Secretary Wes Streeting, Energy Secretary Ed Miliband, Foreign Secretary David Lammy, Defence Secretary John Healey and the Environment Secretary Steve Reed, all of them not turn up for the vote? Starmer issued a 3-line whip to all the backbench MPs instructing them they had to be there and to vote against the Conservative proposal. All sorts of people are now asking why, and they can't answer the question. So you see headlines along the lines of, why did the cabinet not vote? And then there's just talk about the issues and not why they didn't vote. So I'm going to try. Now, I first have to say I'm not a lawyer, so I'm only guessing here. But I did wonder what sort of legal position it might put you in if you knew about a crime being committed, failed to report it or even facilitated it, and then you voted against an inquiry to find out not only who committed the crime but also who knew it was happening and failed to report it. Isn't that some sort of crime? I don't know, any lawyers among you might be able to answer that. I'm just asking. So let's listen to a little clip from the Andrew Gold show, Heretics. I'll put the link in the description.
That members of the grooming gangs were key figures in the communities. Sources from within the Labour Party contacted me. This guy was one of ours. The Islamists have infiltrated the Labour Party. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They conspired with each other to keep news of grooming gangs hidden, operating in the town. This man was the leader of the council. He's now a Secretary of State. We know, the police know, we don't care. I was horrified. So they use public funds to fund the mosque. The mosque has an arrangement with the council. The mosque was run by members of the Labour Party, and there was a cosy arrangement through which the mosque then supplied postal votes. And what I'm sharing with you is...
Would the people at the top of the Labour Party be aware of this?
Yeah, of course, 100%.
Starmer would know this
100%,
is going on.
100%.
That's interesting, isn't it? It goes without saying that if my theory about the cabinet is right, it will also apply to some of those backbenchers. That is, the MPs who were in office when the constituents were coming to them with horror stories that they ignored, or even, as is implied in that little clip, colluded with the councils to suppress, or perhaps were instructed by superior officers to file in the wastebasket. And those guys, those MPs, were not given the chance to abstain. If my theory is correct, it means those MPs are in a rather parlous legal position now. And again, if my theory is correct, it looks like the cabinet comprises people who care as much for their own party workers and supporters as they do for the little people of this country. Whatever. All the Labour Party MPs just followed orders and voted against, including Sarah Champion, who had originally got my respect for campaigning for justice for those girls, but then caved to Starmer's pressure this time. Just to remind you, although news of this horrible history might be new to some of you, it's not for lack of warnings. A short list reveals people as different as Tommy Robinson, Sarah Champion, in the days before the Labour Party body snatched her, Lucy Allen MP, the ex-policewoman Maggie Oliver, the journalist Andrew Norfolk, and dozens of lesser-known officials, such as social workers and, well, hundreds of desperate parents, many of whom were threatened with legal action by the police. Here's a small example. 2 whistleblowers in the Rotherham sexual abuse scandals, this is just in Rotherham, have accused the police watchdog of protecting senior police officers. Well, it's not only the police watchdog who appears to be protecting senior police officers, is it? If my theory is correct, and acting like the mafia. Youth worker Jane Senior and former police strategic drugs analyst Angie Heal made a complaint against senior command at South Yorkshire Police for failing to protect children against sexual grooming gangs in Rotherham. However, the pair say they had to battle to get their allegations heard and say they were originally warned by the watchdog they were making a vexatious complaint which could lead to imprisonment. Now, last week, it says, the complaint was successfully upheld by the police watchdog, but somewhat too late, I'd say. And of course, that's only one small example. How many more people have just been shut up and don't dare come forward because they've been threatened with arrest? Yet there should be justice for the girls, and now it's possible that more of their rapists will be imprisoned. But what about the rest? Why are the police departments not paying their share of the price for what they did to the ordinary people who tried to do something about it? But, well, it looks like the cabinet is fixing that, doesn't it? Just to remind you,
the mosque was run by members of the Labour Party, and there was a cosy arrangement through which the mosque then supplied postal votes.
I'll tell you about the postal votes. What happened, what tends to happen in these sorts of communities is that everybody applies for postal votes, the women as well, and then all the postal votes are taken to the mosque and they're filled out by various people in the mosque, not by the women, especially the women themselves, but also the infirm or even men who just can't be bothered. They've just allowed their names to be used. That's what Raja Miah is talking about here. Anyway, I just thought I'd remind you of that. And so, yes, Labour Party, we see you, and we don't like what we see. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.